What if I told you the first cell phone ever was bigger than a brick? And not only that, but it was also heavier too. Yeah, you heard me right. The very first cell phone was definitely not sleek or portable. In fact, you'd probably struggle to even call it a phone. Welcome back to my channel. Today we are taking a look at the weird and wacky history of the very first cell phone ever. So make sure to like this video, and let's get started. So before we get into the nitty-gritty of the first cell phone, we need to rewind the clock just a bit. Picture this. It's the early 1970s, and people are starting to feel really left out when they didn't have a way to stay connected while on the go. At that point, if you wanted to reach someone and they weren't home, well, you were simply out of luck. But all that would change in just a few years with the creation of the first cell phone, which is now known as the Motorola Dynatac 800X. But why did we need a cell phone anyway? Well, to answer that question, let's talk about the competition. See, back in the early 70s, there were two tech giants battling it out in the world of telecommunications. One was of course Motorola, but the other one might surprise you. That's because IBM was looking to get into the mobile phone game too. The problem was both companies had different ideas about how these devices should work. Motorola believed that the future was wireless, whereas IBM thought that wired phones were the way to go. Now, don't get me wrong, IBM wasn't completely off the mark because some wired phones are still used today. Think about the old rotary phones you've seen in movies. Those things are wired. But that's beside the point, because by 1973, Motorola had a prototype for the world's first handheld cellular phone, and in the same year, Martin Cooper, one of the lead inventors on the project, made the first mobile phone call. He called his rival at IBM to rub it in their face. So how long did it take to charge this baby? Well, you'd have to plug it in for 10 hours straight to get just 30 minutes of talk time. So you can see why this phone was big and heavy. The size and weight were necessary compromises given the technology available at the time. And speaking of the size, you're probably wondering what it was like to actually use this thing. Well, it looked like an oversized TV remote with a big black box and buttons. And no, it didn't have a screen like the smartphones we're used to today. Instead, it had 7 LED lights that lit up in sequence to show you how many buttons you needed to press. Here's a quick demonstration. Let us say you wanted to dial the number 8. You'd press the button twice and you'd see 4 LEDs light up. Then you'd press the button a third time and 5 LEDs would light up. And finally, you'd press it a fourth time and 7 LEDs would light up, letting you know that you successfully dialed the no 8. Pretty intuitive, right? If you wanted to make a call, you'd flip open the lid, type in the person's number, then flip it back shut and place it next to your ear. Then you'd hear a beep and wait for them to pick up. When they did, you could talk as long as you wanted until the battery died. But here's the kicker. Carrying this phone around was basically a workout, because it weighed about 2.2 pounds or 1 kilogram. Not to mention it was also bulky, measuring about 13 by 1.75 by 6 inches or 33 by 4.5 by 15.2 centimeters. And although it looks like a toy by today's standards, this device changed the world forever. So maybe it wasn't so bad after all. In fact, this phone paved the way for countless inventions and innovations in the world of mobile technology. It was the first step toward putting a computer in everyone's pocket. Before we move on, I want to share some fun facts about this phone that most people don't know. Did you know that the Motorola Dynatac cost around $3,995 when it launched in 1983? Adjusted for inflation, that's about $11,000 today. So if you were considering buying one, bring a lot of money. Only 100 people bought it because not only was it expensive, but it was also limited to just 30 minutes of talk time per charge. Now let us compare the original Dynatac to a modern smartphone and you'll see just how far we've come in terms of technology. On the left, you have the Dynatac from 1983, which weighed over 2 pounds. And on the right, you have a modern iPhone weighing just 0.3 pounds. Talk about a weight difference. As for the screen, the Dynatac didn't have one, not even close. It just had a bunch of buttons. Meanwhile, today's smartphones are practically mini TVs with high-resolution displays and touchscreens. But it doesn't end there. The original Dynatac had a battery life of just 30 minutes, which meant you'd have to carry around a charger. Modern smartphones, on the other hand, can last anywhere from a few hours to a few days, depending on your usage. And let's not forget about processing power. The original Dynatac had a processor that ran at just 4.5 kHz, which is incredibly slow by today's standards. Modern smartphones, however, have processors that run at several gigahertz, and they can perform complex tasks almost instantly. Alright, I see what you're doing. You're thinking this is great information, but you're missing the classic call of action. Well, guess what? I got you covered. Leave a comment down below telling us what your first ever cell phone was. We'd love to hear all about it. Maybe you had a Nokia or an iPhone, or maybe something else entirely. Who knows? Anyway, let's keep moving. As much as this phone may have been a pain to carry around, it was also a pretty big leap forward for mobile technology. Before this, if you wanted to make a call on the go, you were pretty much out of luck. You'd either have to find a payphone or wait until you got home. But with the invention of the Motorola Dynatac 800, people could make calls from virtually anywhere, as long as they had a strong signal. Of course, the impact of this invention was huge. People could stay in touch with friends and family while traveling, commuting, or just out and about. It also allowed for greater productivity, as business people could take calls and conduct business from wherever they happened to be. However, it's important to note that the Motorola Dynatac was not the first mobile phone ever created. There were a few other devices that came before it that had similar functionality. For example, the Bell system had been experimenting with cellular technology since the 1940s, and they had a working mobile phone system by the 1960s. However, these phones were large and cumbersome, not to mention expensive. They were never mass-produced, and they never caught on with the general public. In contrast, the Motorola Dynatac was much more compact and affordable, which made it much more appealing to consumers. It was truly the first phone that could be used by anyone, anywhere. Of course, it wasn't perfect. The battery life was short, the signal could be spotty, and the phone was still quite expensive. But these were all growing pains that were to be expected with any new technology. The important thing is that the Motorola Dynatac opened up a whole new world of possibilities for mobile communication. It showed that people wanted this technology and that they were willing to pay a premium for it. Once other companies saw this, they jumped on the bandwagon, and soon there were dozens of different models of mobile phones on the market. Prices came down and the technology quickly became mainstream. Looking back, it's hard to imagine life without mobile phones. They've become an integral part of our everyday lives. We use them to stay connected with friends and family, to conduct business, and to access information. The VA put the world at our fingertips, and the VA made it easier than ever to communicate with others. Who would have thought that the first cell phone, a clunky, expensive device that weighed over 2 pounds and lasted only 30 minutes on a charge, would eventually lead to the smartphones we have today? It's amazing to think about how far technology has come in just a few decades. So the next time you pull out your phone to make a call or send a text message, take a moment to appreciate the long and winding road that led to that device. From the first cell phone to today's smartphones, it's been a wild ride and it's been a truly remarkable journey. Well folks, that's a wrap on our video about the first ever cell phone. I hope you enjoyed learning about the history of this groundbreaking invention. If you did, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more fun and educational videos. And hey, if you have any cool ideas for topics we should cover in the future, leave a comment below and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Bye. This phone changed the world, but what comes next? From brick to pocket-sized supercomputers, what's next?